storytelling is such a powerful tool in social selling. So, on social platforms, authenticity and engagement absolutely rule. Telling stories can break through the noise and help you create meaningful interactions online that you can then take to that all important first offline conversation. When we share stories, we're pulling in listeners into our world and hopefully their world too, because if we're selling to them, we should be all in that same world essentially. Welcome to the Making Sales Social podcast, featuring the top voices in sales, marketing, and business. Join Bryn Tillman, Stan Robinson Jr., and me, Bob Woods, as we each bring you the best tips and strategies our guests are teaching their clients so you can leverage them for your own virtual and social selling. Enjoy the show. Welcome to Making Sales Social Live, coming to you from the Social Sales Link Virtual Studios. I'm Bob Woods, social selling AI and LinkedIn strategist, consultant, and trainer, as well as a LinkedIn top voice. Joining me today are the co-hosts of Making Sales Social Live. First is the guy who does everything that I do and is also our sales navigator guru, Stan Robinson Jr. How you doing, Stan?
Doing fantastic. Good to see you, Bryn and Bob.
And speaking of Bryn, because she is last but most certainly not least, because she's the LinkedIn whisperer and the authority on things related to sales, social selling, and LinkedIn, as well as an official LinkedIn insider in sales, Bryn Tillman. How you doing, Bryn?
Hello, gentlemen. Very happy to be here. I love our topic today.
Yeah, today we have got a great topic as we are diving into why storytelling is such a powerful tool in social selling. So on social platforms, authenticity and engagement absolutely rule. Telling stories can break through the noise and help you create meaningful interactions online that you can then take to that all important first offline conversation. When we share stories, we're pulling in listeners into our world and hopefully their world too, because if we're selling to them, we should be all in that same world essentially. Stories then foster trust and reliability, which are crucial in laying the foundation to build relationships, especially in our digital first world, because a well-told story is memorable and can influence decisions more effectively than standard sales pitches. What do you guys think about all that?
I think it's a mouthful.
It's a mouthful, but we're telling a story. We are painting the canvas for a story.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, I love this. And you know, people relate to stories. You can pitch all day long and it's going to be so boring and disinterested. People are going to click off. But if you've got a great story, something, and to your point, Bob, that they're relating to, that they can see themselves in, all of a sudden, that not only are you engaging people at a very high level of credibility, but they can imagine working with you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Could not agree more.
We're wired to listen to stories, and as you both said, be drawn into stories and imagine ourselves within the story. So stories are a powerful way of engaging.
And it's the storytellers and the people who do it effectively who are really going to, who have already stood out, let's face it, and are going to continue to stand out as we all go out there and we try to get those, like I said before, all important first sales conversations started. So now let's go through some of the different ways and channels, if you will, where we can use specifically LinkedIn to distribute our stories, or however you want to put that, distribute or just tell our stories. The first one I'm going to take really quick, just because I'm still kind of the profile guy here. So the LinkedIn profile is a great way to do that. It's almost your personal storybook. So with your about section and actually with your headline too, this is where you start building the story, but not necessarily your story, because you want to bring your audience of prospects in. So you actually need to identify who they are, but then you can weave that story through at the same time. Use it as a narrative that speaks to who they are, the challenges that they're overcoming. And then you can start bringing in value that you bring into that, especially in the about section. The featured section is where you can go crazy with stories and actually feature stories that you have shared through some of the other channels that we're actually going to be talking about here in a second, to really spotlight them and highlight them so that people know who you are and what you're talking about, and especially how you help them. And then you can also use your experience section to not only share your story, but to share success stories tied to specific roles. So I think the profile is terrific when it comes to doing things like that. I have a feeling you guys are going to agree with that, but I want to hear your specific thoughts about that.
So I'm going to throw in, I think the recommendation section is a phenomenal place to have storytelling. And it's storytelling if you are recommending someone else, or storytelling if someone is recommending you. If someone recommends you, you can actually connect them to specific roles and inside of your organization. So we actually, one of the things we teach is to not just use LinkedIn as a resume, but as a resource. So you can use the thread on your experience to represent different areas inside of the solutions that you bring. And so you can have recommendations for different topics or titles inside of your experience section. And with premium, you can actually link a recommendation right into your featured section.
Yep.
So that's pretty valuable.
100%.
Stan, anything you want to add to that?
Only one of the beauties of LinkedIn is you can tell your stories in different modalities. So not just text, but images, video, audio, even in your little 10-second name pronunciation. You can add a little value statement in addition to your name.
So many different ways to tell stories. And actually videos was going to be the next section that we were going to talk about, because talk about an especially dynamic way to tell a story, because you can convey emotion and authenticity directly. You have that eye contact with the person who is watching. And while it's obviously not a two-way conversation, they could at least see you and hopefully feel the authenticity that you're bringing through, like customer testimonials, maybe behind the scenes looks, or tell the story of your products and services as well. And that's just the tip of the iceberg about how you can use videos specifically to tell stories.
So if I can add, and another thing that you can do is interview people or have conversations with your clients and have video around that. But you mentioned something that it's a one way, but I'm gonna add a couple of
areas
where we can, so where we can actually encourage it to be a two-way conversation.
Yep.
So one of the things that we can do is, in our storytelling, if let's say we post it first and then put it into our featured section versus uploading it directly, you can ask, I'd love to hear your perspective in comments and invite it to be two ways. So I think, and I'm just doing this off the top of my head without preparation really, but I do think although I agree generally, it's going to be a one way when you're posting publicly. I think there are ways that we can encourage that conversation.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I know what I was thinking. If we use something like Dub or Loom, right, where they watch the video and they, I think from Dub you can see how long they watched it. They're offered other content. They can send comments. And so there are actual video apps that you could use. Vidyard, I think, is one. Dub is the one I really like. But there are apps that you can use that create a little more interaction.
Yep. Could not agree more. Could not agree more. Next, I'm going to let Stan handle this one. Telling stories in LinkedIn posts and shares, since that's what all of us should be doing. Is, even though you do a video within a post, don't forget that you can also use just posts and shares in and of themselves. Stan, do you have any thoughts about how to do that?
Yep. So one thing I will mention, just so I don't forget it, whether it's posts, videos, etc., is when you're telling the story, you should not be the hero of your story. The client needs to be the hero. And I know it's not, okay, how do you tell a story in post? Because we'll talk about that. But it's easy to forget, because we always want to talk about how we helped and our solution, and we become the hero. And that's when your client turns off. But when they're the hero and you're talking about them and they can see them in that position, you're just the guide.
I love that.
That's important to remember.
That's just pitch perfect. Bryn, you want to add anything to that?
How can you add to that? That's pitch perfect.
I know. Tell me about it. That's why I tossed it to you, because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to say after that.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I love that. And, it's because we want to be, as the salespeople, we think if we're going to be the hero, we want to be the hero that they hire, but they hire us to make them look like the hero. So I think that was fabulous.
Yeah. And that definitely speaks to emotion too. I mean, because it's tough to feel an emotion when someone is making themselves to be the hero, but if they're writing it in more of a way to where people can imagine themselves being the hero in that particular situation, it's so much more impactful, without a doubt.
Yeah, and they go, that's what I want to look like in my organization.
Exactly.
Yeah, love it. Love it.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So the last one. So now we're going to talk about LinkedIn articles more specifically. So these are the more longer form pieces and the more blog type of thing, which a lot of people aren't using. And I get why they're not using it, but there is a reason why they should be using it. So it's obviously, just in general, articles are for more in-depth storytelling. So you can really drill into more of those stories if you wish. So the reason why that they're not used as much is because they're tough to surface in LinkedIn itself. The flip side of that, though, is they get mad SEO in Google. Google will pop up a LinkedIn article every bit as much as it will like a profile or something like that. So you actually get more off-platform eyeballs through LinkedIn articles than you do on platform. And then hopefully they're actually signed in at that point, and they can they can definitely comment, maybe even click over to your profile. Once they click over to your profile, you know that they're there because hopefully you are using the who's viewed your profile feature on LinkedIn. So, LinkedIn articles, it's definitely a longer story, but there's more strategic value in using that than most people might actually know.
Yeah, my articles come up on Google before my profile, before our website, before anything else.
Yep.
And there are people that will reach out going, "Oh my gosh, I really enjoyed your article on X, Y, and Z," and it's a LinkedIn article. So I love that. I'm going to just throw in, which I think we weren't planning on talking, but I think it's really important that if you're like, okay, I have a great case study, but it's not a great story. Like I've got data, right? This is an opportunity to go into ChatGPT and, say, I'd like to write a case story. I'm going to give you data. I don't want you to make anything up, right? But this is the type of client. I want it to be 100% authentic. It won't be, right? It'll be 80, 85%. And then you have to just edit it to be the real story. But give ChatGPT the data. And this is what I'd include. Here was the challenge that the client was going through before they needed us. here's why they reached out to us or how they found us. Here's why they chose us. And I know it's still about us, but I'll get it to be with them. Here is the solution that, that we worked on together and then implemented. Here were the results they got. And here is how it impacted their business. And I know, based on what I just heard Stan say, I know I have to adjust that a little bit to make it less about us, because that's how I think. But maybe saying in the story, make sure you're emphasizing that your buyer is the hero. Like,
right.
Add that in, right? And then put in all those statistics and the concepts that you like, and it will write that case story for you, and then just edit it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Brilliance there. Absolute
Yes.
brilliance there.
Yes.
Yay.
Yay.
All right.
So now we've talked about, the why. We've talked about kind of the what. Let's go specifically now into the nuts and bolts of crafting a compelling story for social selling. So we're going to go into these in specifics here in just a second, but generally what you're going to want to do is, introduce the XYZ company and the challenge or the role or whatever that is facing. You're going to be doing discovery, doing discovery of whatever their situation is. The big one, I think, is the consequences of status quo. What happens if nothing changes? And then you're going to want to go into the solution provided, any outcome and insights that were gained from that type of thing. And again, just like Stan said, though, making them the hero and not you the hero. So now we've kind of done top line on everything. Let's talk a little bit more about the first one, introducing either the company's challenge or the role challenge that someone within who has a specific role who may be more in like an industry or a vertical may have.
Go to Stan.
Go to Stan. Everybody's like, oh, okay.
Role, for example, it could be a VP of sales or a CRO that whose team does not have the pipeline that they need in order to hit their sales objectives. And that's who it is, and that's a little bit about the context of what they're facing. One of the things that we were talking about beforehand that Bryn mentioned that's so easy for folks to forget are the consequences of inaction. What happens if we don't do anything? Because more sales are lost to the status quo than to competitors in all likelihood. Now, I don't have the data, but I'm pretty sure a lot of sales are lost because it's not because they went with company ABC, it's because they didn't do anything.
Right.
So when you include, okay, what happens if you don't do anything? That helps us set the stage.
Yeah, so I like that because I mean it does go to that third point, but it's important though because one of the things that you want to do in any story is to set up conflict. So conflict comes from, not only the challenge in and of itself, but, the consequences of status quo, I think, are big too. And that in and of itself just automatically builds in conflict there. So there's a lot of stuff there that you can play with in that introducing the challenge that either the company has or the role has, make sure that you are determining what the conflict is and the consequences of status quo. And you do all of that through what the second stage is, and that's observations that you make during discovery. So, and discovery is always used as like this big, formal type of thing. It's just about talking, just finding out what you're, what's going on there when you're exploring their problem. What are you observing there? What are some of the recognized issues? What are some of the unrecognized issues? What's the impact of the problem? Or, even what's some missed opportunities there? This is where you really, and you should be doing this during a discovery call anyhow, but in this case, you're looking to not only discover all this stuff, but you're looking at this in terms of building that story as well.
Great.
And then, so we've done status quo already. After all of this is done, and they work with you to solve their problem through the use of your product or service. You got to tell them what happened. So, here's how we did it. Here was the outcome. Outcome was, should be positive, and, the insights gained as well. And I think that that's the important part, because you need to show your role not just as a solution provider, but as a strategic partner, while making them the hero of their own story.
Awesome.
Yeah. So then, like Bryn said, you can leverage, you can use like ChatGPT to not only through that very specific way that Bryn just said, which is brilliant, but, even to help just brainstorm and draft stories in general. Feed it the basic elements, background, challenge, observations, outcome, along with everything that Bryn just said. And when done right, it could help you flesh out a compelling story. And because we're talking about stories and story writing and things like that, I'm going to bring in my older analogy of ChatGPT being like a writer's room in Hollywood, because I think this is where it really applies. Because in a writer's room, you have like a head writer or showrunner or whatever, who is depending on all of the writers in the staff to really flesh out a story and measure out the beats and do all the things that I won't get into now. But the showrunner has the staff to help it out. ChatGPT acts like your writer's room, especially in situations like this.
Well, what you can also do is have it write in your voice. If you add instructions, you can ask it to be a little sarcastic or a little funny. You could, I don't know if you want to do it with a case story, or you could say, write like T.S. Eliot. Or, if you have, a particular author that you want to get the tone and the sound like. So you can have a lot of fun with it. But ultimately, what I love about all of this is we're taking a success story in this case, and we're making it palatable for the average reader, so that there's not deep details that they get lost in that they don't care about, but they can read it quickly, easily, and then go back to Stan's point and say, do I see myself being a hero in this scenario if I would do the same thing? So I think that's huge.
And you can even put that into ChatGPT too. Ensure that I, the person telling the story, am not the hero. Ensure that the person who I am writing about is the hero in the story, because sometimes people may have a problem with removing themselves just because they were so involved in it. So that's actually very understandable. Ask ChatGPT to do that work for you. See what happens.
Fabulous.
Point. Good.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of Making Sales Social Live. If you're with us here live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or X right now, we do this every week, so keep an eye out for our live sessions. If you're listening to us recorded on our podcast, go ahead and hit that subscribe or follow button if you haven't already. More info on our podcast is available at socialsaleslink.com/podcast. We do 2 shows weekly, this one and our Making Sales Social interview series, where we talk with leaders and experts in sales, marketing, business, and so many more areas to help you with your sales and social selling. So when you're out and about, be sure to make your sales
social.
Oh, wow. Don't miss an episode. Visit socialsaleslink.com/podcast. Leave a review down below. Tell us what you think, what you learned, and what you want to hear from us next. Register for free resources at linkedinlibrary.com. You can also listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Play. Visit our website, socialsaleslink.com, for more information.